Graphing linear equations. The first thing we have to understand is that this is called a t-table, and it is just the input-output box shrunk down. You did input-output boxes, I believe, earlier than 6th grade, but I know many of you remembered them from 6th grade. And then we did them in 7th grade, and now here we are again in 8th grade doing them. We need to have the equation rewritten in the form y equals mx plus b. When we have it rewritten in the form of y equals mx plus b, we will use this part here, what y is equal to help us figure out our y values given x values. You can choose any x values. It does not matter. Any x values at random, whatever, it doesn't matter. The only thing is some x values will give you a y value that is not going to fit in our graph. Okay? So you might have to do more than 3 or more than 2 x values to get the points to fit on the graph. So picking numbers, and most common numbers students will pick are 0, 1, 2 are the most common. And we're going to substitute that in to this expression and just do the arithmetic as if we were in chapter 1 of the textbook. So what we're going to look at is, well, if x is 0, what is the value of y? So when we do that math, 5/2 times 0 is 0. Minus 10 is a negative 10. When I put a 1 in for x, 5/2 times 1 is 5/2. And then 5/2 minus 10, if I did my math right, is 7.5, and that's negative 7.5. You can double check that on a calculator at your own leisure. For the third one, when I substitute 2 in for x, and I go 5/2 times 2, that is 5, and 5 minus 10 is a negative 5. I would then plot those points. Only right now, as I'm doing it on this, I would plot the points. You would just move your blue points, the 2 of them, to any of those 2 values over there. Now, some of you might ask, well, why did I do 3 of them if I only need 2? The only reason I did 3 of them is so that we can check for any mistakes. If the 3 points that you plot or are looking at don't fit on a straight line, then you are incorrect and would not have a smiley face for those people that had fallen asleep already. All right. So, graphing those points. When x is 0, we got a negative 10. When x was 1, we got a negative 7 1/2. And when x is 2, we get a negative 5. I'm going to ignore that middle point so I don't have to worry about graphing a negative 7/2. So 0, when x is 0, y is a negative 10. That's down there. And when x is 2, we get a negative 5. And then just as a check, if I had 1, does it fall somewhere around that negative 7.5 point? Yeah, it's going to fit somewhere in there close. You would move these points. It doesn't matter which point you put where, but you would move those 2 points down to those dots. And that would give you the graph of the line, and the graph of the line would be something of this nature here. All right, so let's look at the next problem. In the next problem, we have not the form y equals mx plus b, so I need to rewrite that. So I'll start with 2x plus 2y equals 2. Now, in the last few assignments and throughout, we've done a ton of problems where we have to rewrite something that looks like this into the form y equals mx plus b. You need to know how to do this. This will be on your test, so you have to know how to do this. Whether you subtract 2x or think of it as just moving 2x to the other side, same result. 2y is going to equal a negative 2x plus 2. I have to divide everything by 2 because I want what y is equal to, not what 2y is. So I divide by 2, divide by 2, divide by 2, and I get y equals a negative 1x plus 1. So I am going to use a negative x plus 1. Again, that's a negative 1x. So I have a negative. I'm going to put in my x value plus 1, negative, put in my x value plus 1, negative, put in my x value plus 1. What are my x values? Again, you can come up with any numbers that you want. The most common that students typically pick, because they're small, 0 is always a good one because it's easy to do that math, but 0, 1, and 2. So I will substitute those values in, and then I get my result. A negative 0 is just 0, plus 1 is 1. When I put a 1 in, I get a negative 1 plus 1, that is 0, and a negative of 2, substitute my 2 in for x, I get a negative 2 plus 1, which is a negative 1. So my ordered pairs, not that I need to do this table as well, it's just some of you will be able to do this math in your head, and you won't have to write things down in the table part here as the showing the work. It's an option, but you don't have to do both. You can choose whichever method works for you. I will tell you this right now, and that is, if you struggle just a little bit in mathematics, you're going to want to use the big table because that'll help you do the calculations. So plotting those 3 points, when x is 0, y is 1. When x is 1, y is 0. And when x is 2, y is a negative 1, you get that. And again, you can, any of these 2 blue points can match up with any of those 2 blue points, and that'll give you your line. Moving on. A negative x equals 3. Now, I know we want to rewrite the problem where it's y equals mx plus 3, but I don't have a y. So the easiest thing to do is just write it as the variable equals. So if I have a negative x equals 3, that means a positive x would equal a negative 3. All I did is multiply by a negative 1 to both sides, so I have a positive x. Well, if x is a negative 3, well, where is x a negative 3? X is a negative 3 all along here. Okay? So all you have to do is move these 2 blue points so they're on that dotted line, and you would have the graph. Because it's everywhere where x is negative 3. So we don't have to do any of this in here. In fact, this really doesn't work in there when you're just given one letter. Next problem, it's already written in the form 3/4 x minus 2. So it's 3/4 x minus 2. It's going to be 3/4 times something, subtract 2. 3/4 times something, subtract 2. 3/4 times something, subtract 2. Now, a hint, yes, you can use any value you want for x. However, notice that it's 3/4. You're going to divide by 4. Okay? So the values I am going to use is a negative 4, 0, 4. The reason why I'm using the 4 is because then that way it eliminates the fraction. I will not continue to have a fraction. Okay, so let's substitute those in, do our math, and see what we get. When I put in a negative 4 here, If you do it on your calculator, 3/4 times a -4, that's going to give you a -3, minus 2 is a -5. 0 times 3/4 is 0. Subtract 2 is a -2. And 4 times 3/4 is 3. Minus 2 is 1. Plot those points. Again, you won't be able to necessarily plot the points when you're on con. On here, I plot them because on con, you'll just click on the blue dots and move them to the locations you want. So whatever point you grab first, you move, say, the first blue dot to a -4, -5. So I would move this to a -4, -5. So I would move it down here. Okay? Then my other one, if I go with 4, 1, I would move this to 4, 1. And I would move it to there, and you would have a line running through there, something like that. And that would be your answer. Your answer is going to be where you move the 2 dots. It is not the math that you're doing over here. A -5y equals 45. Again, I'm only given one letter, so I just want to know what that one letter is equal to. So if I have a -5y equals 45, I want to know what y is equal to. So I divide by a -5, divide by a -5, and I get a -9. Y is equal to a -9. No matter what the value of x is, y is a -9. Well, where is y a -9? Y is a -9 all along here. That is where y is a negative line. So you would move the dots so they're down on that line, anywhere on that line, and that would be the correct answer. Y equals a -1/2 x minus 1. Again, we're going to have a -1/2 x minus 1. So this will be a -1/2 minus 1, -1/2 minus 1, a -1/2 minus 1. Again, I can use any values I want for x, but because of my fraction 1/2, I want to choose even numbers. Okay, it helps me not have to do math fractions. It helps me not have to graph fractions on my graph. So I'm going to go with 0 to 4. You can use any point you want on there as long as it gives you a result that fits in the graph. So when we substitute the 0 in here, -1/2 times 0 is 0, minus 1 is a -1. When I substitute a 2 in, a -1/2 of 2, or -1/2 times 2 is a -1, minus 1 is a -2. And when I put 4 in here, half of 4 is 2. It's negative because you're multiplying by a negative. So you get a -2 minus 1 is a -3. I use those 3 points for my graph. So my graph is going to be anywhere from 0, -1, to -2, and 4, -3. My graph, moving my blue dots down to any one of those, is going to be something along there. A -2y equals a -16. Again, I'm only one letter. So because I only have one letter, I need to figure out what that one letter is equal to. Divide everything by a -2, divide everything by a -2, y equals 8. Y is going to equal 8 no matter the value for x, because x has no effect on my equation. So y equals 8 is going to be along here. We just move the blue dots anywhere along that dotted line, and that would be your graph for that problem. A negative 2x minus y is equal to a negative 2. Again, we need to rewrite this in the form y equals mx plus b. So this is going to be a negative y is equal to 2x minus 2. Some people struggle with this problem at this point because they don't know what to do with that negative y out front. Because that is a negative y, I multiply everything by a negative 1. Okay? Basically, I just change all the signs. Okay? When I change the signs, a negative y, positive y. A positive 2x, negative 2x. Subtracting 2, adding 2. I just do the opposite of everything. A negative y is equal to 2x minus 2. A positive y is equal to a negative 2x plus 2. I use the negative 2x plus 2 because I want to have a positive 1y. Choosing any values, 0, 1, 2, there's no fractions, so I'll just choose the values 0, 1, 2, and I'll substitute those values and do my calculations on a calculator or in your head. Either way, just make sure you get the right answer. Plugging in 0 for x, negative 2 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Plugging 1 in for x, you get a negative 2 plus 2, that is 0. Substituting 2 in for x, negative 2 times 2 is 4. Let's try that again. A negative 2 times 2 is a negative 4, plus 2 is a negative 2. Graph those 3 points. When x is 0, we got y to be 2. When x is 1, y was 0. And when x is 2, y is a negative 2. And your graph is going to be something along there. All right, that is it. Your assignment is graphing linear equations. Remember, today we're graphing linear equations. When you're done with this lesson, work on any of the lessons that you need to complete, and then start reviewing. Make sure you do review of all of these lessons so you can get yourself ready for the test that is still planned to be Friday. The test is, I'm still planning to do the test on Friday. We'll see what happens.